Thank you, everybody, so much for coming on a July afternoon for our resource group. We're super excited to have Brandon Hernandez in the house with San Diego Beer News. I've known Brandon for a while, starting with the new Brewery Accelerator Workshop, which was pretty cool. That's been a while. As always, with our resource groups, we ask everybody that's here to put in the chat who you are, for who you're with, and a little bit about what you do so people know how to reach out to you. As we get some new people, if we have other people jump in, I'll reiterate that. Very briefly, I always like to reiterate the mission of Start a Brewery and kind of the why we're here part. We are here to raise the bar for startups and growing breweries through education, while simultaneously lowering the barrier to entry for those who are looking to live their dream. And I've had a lot of people lately say, free resources of resources. And I said, yes, that's exactly what we're doing. I think that's been our tagline for the last couple of weeks and conferences. So we really appreciate that. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to thank our sponsor, White Labs. We're going to jump into our contributor spotlight with Brandon. I do have a couple of upcoming events that are super exciting. August 16th, we have our third quarter educational webinar. We do those with craft beer professionals, Andrew's team. This time it's going to be Jeff O'Brien from Chestnut Cambronne. If you were in Minneapolis at CBC, you might have met him. He's going to be talking about raising investment capital legally, which I think is fun. August 25th, then our next resource group is going to be Todd Olander. We're going to get back to ingredients with Root Shoot Malting, and sponsored by White Labs as well. So Neva, I hope we'll be back in the house again for that. Maybe Eric too. Recent podcasts, we just recently downloaded contract brewing and alternating proprietorship. And we had a really interesting group of people on as guests for that. Elisa Bowens Mercado from Rhythm Brewing Company in Connecticut, Phil Markowski from Two Roads, also in Connecticut, and then Matthew Osterman from Sleeping Giant Brewing in Denver. It's a really good conversation. And we're doing a part 2 of that lands next Monday. And we're going to be, or sorry, next Tuesday. And we're going to be talking to Jamil Zanishev and talk about his adventure with Heretic, because he started with an alternating proprietorship. And he's going to be talking with Candace about the ins and outs of contract brewing and alternating proprietorships and how they're different. So that's going to be super cool. We do our podcast in partnership with All About Beer magazine, so we always try to give a shout out there too. So yeah, Neva, thank you so much for your sponsorship. White Labs is so appreciated for all of your support. So I'll let you jump in and explain what you do.
Sure. Thank you for having us as always. We're happy to sponsor. As a lot of people already know, White Labs, we are a provider of yeast supplies as well as fermentation services. What we're trying to do is really look for solutions for all brewers of any size, as well as those outside of beer. So putting a lot of focus on alternative beverages and cultures and fermentation support for that as well. So to get more information, of course, you can visit our website, whitelabs.com, or for the latest, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. I think it's just White Labs East. So pretty easy to find, and yeah, doing all kinds of things. I don't know if Eric has more. We've got tons of stuff going on, but I don't want to take up too much of Brandon's time.
Oh, that's fine. Eric, didn't you have a new yeast just drop, a new dry strain?
Yeah, we've had 2. We've been working for years on R&D and trying to, find the same quality that we see in our liquid cultures. So we're proud to release California Ale Yeast WP001, as well as WP066 London Fog, which is pretty exciting.
Nice. Super cool. Well, thank you both. And thank you for being here. All right, Brandon, let's dive in. Let's start out with a little intro. Let's talk about yourself. What do you do when you're not doing beer? All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Well, speaking of good stuff, White Labs is good stuff, and they can take as much time as they'd like, because in addition to backing something good like this, they back my site as well, and I really appreciate them as well. So that's heartfelt. So a little bit about me. I am the founder and executive editor of San Diego Beer News, and that's an online resource for, as you might have guessed, San Diego beer news. I'm also a contributor and correspondent for the San Diego Union Tribune, our main newspaper here in San Diego, Fox 5 Morning News, Brewers Association entities, The New Brewer, and craftbeer.com. And I'm the food and beverage editor for Rancho Coast Magazine, a publication here in San Diego. In addition to that, that's me now, but I've worn many hats in my career. Have 25 years of marketing experience, and that goes across everything from microelectronics to nonprofit organizations and also breweries. So I have been a journalist for 16 years as well, and that has covered a lot. But the entire 16 years I have spent reporting on craft beer, and I'm proud to say reporting a lot on the local beer industry here in my hometown of San Diego, California. I'm a native San Diegan. I hear that that's kind of rare, but I bump into a lot of native San Diegans at local brewing companies and tasting rooms. So I don't know. I think it might be a myth. I need to do more investigation that will require going to more tasting rooms. So I had mentioned that I worked for breweries. I've been kind of a double agent in my career in that I spent the better part of a decade working for a trio of breweries out here in San Diego, not simultaneously. I started out at Stone Brewing. I got a great education there, worked with some tremendous marketers, made some really cool things happen, got to contribute in a big way there. Moved on to Alesmith Brewing to head their marketing, worked with a little smaller team there. And then as the market was shifting to smaller breweries, I wanted to try my hand at that as well. And so I was able to move over to Society Brewing, another noteworthy brewery in San Diego that does tremendous things. I spent over 3 years there, and that was my last stop before I moved on to start my own business. So I really felt like we had originally talked about me maybe coming on and talking about some marketing topics for this discussion, and I really thought that the most valuable thing I could probably contribute is talking about media relations, in that I have a unique perspective of not only having been media for over 15 years, but also having worked with media while being part of the media. And just it's a really cool duality there as far as perspective. And so hopefully we can get into some cool things. I'll try my best and share a couple of tips. But the good news is it's not all that difficult, really. So there's your I don't know what would be, not a disclaimer, the opposite of a disclaimer.
Yes. Well,
The good news is it's not that difficult.
that's also the Reader's Digest version. This isn't hard.
Exactly. It's exactly. But then again, if you're struggling though, don't feel bad, because
well,
that also happens.
there you go. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you do with your clients and what problems you solve? That the client word takes on all sorts of different meanings depending on which hat you have on.
That's true. For me, the most obvious, I would say, client would be traditional clients, like having my own news outlet. That would be advertisers and sponsors. But then also, in a sense, my clients are also breweries. And part of that is because when I set up San Diego Beer News, while ostensibly it is a news outlet, I wanted it to be a lot more. I wanted this to be a kind of like, with somebody like me who just loves craft beer way too much, would want to see if they were trying to find all the information they possibly could, just almost more than you would logically need or want. And so it's a multifaceted, full-scale resource. And what I have done is built in a lot of tools and, again, resources that breweries can utilize on a daily basis to kind of reach people in a variety of different ways. So in that sense, I guess they are clients. But that said, these are services that I just provide. They're not like you have to pay to utilize them or anything like that. But I see the local breweries as my clients, and I'm always looking out for them and trying to find new ways for them to do things like reach people, sell their beer, and things like that. So one thing I love about my audience is that I can help breweries get in touch with the most connected, engaged, motivated beer fans, people who are going to be their customers, who want to patronize their establishments and purchase their products and become real fans of their business based on what they have to offer, from beer all the way to who they are, what they stand for, and things like that. But then also, I'm a great way for vendors to get in touch with brewery personnel, because one of the cool things is, in addition to having a really engaged base of people who want to know about breweries, this industry that I love so much, the members of it are a key part of my audience as well, and make up about 20% of the total audience. And so we're talking brewery owners, executives, brewers, tasting room staff, and employees all across sales, marketing, and everything else. So everybody can kind of be connected, and I can help people to get their message across. And I really enjoy that. So that's what I try to focus on, is to really just keep those lines of communications open, keep it all honest, and obviously not like a total advertorial sphere,
Mhm.
and just do it in a way that people aren't oversaturated with information, but at the same time, they're getting plenty of information, and it's some things they can trust, things they can believe in, and that's really important to me. Just kind of like the journalistic part of me takes over in that sense, and I try to put on the marketing flair, the things I've learned in the marketing industry over the last several decades. I try to put that to use and help people put their best foot forward, whether it's a vendor or a brewery, or every now and then even just somebody from the craft beer scene at large.
It sounds like there's always more on your website if somebody wants to dig.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm actually working on a new website right now. It's got way more functionality, because one of the hard parts is digging on it right now, because there is just such a plethora. And so I'm hoping in about 2 months, I'll debut something that's just really like, whoa. I kind of feel like when you go on there, it's pretty whoa, but I want it to be whoa. So soon all of the tools and resources will be even better. But you're catching me at a really good time, because I'm in the middle of that. And I also just worked with on an article for the New Brewer about marketing. So the timing on this particular session we're having right now is really good. It's all top of mind for me.
Excellent. Well, we'll practice the whoa. That sounds like what we need to be doing. All right. So tell us
Hashtag
how you,
whoa.
tell us how you first got involved in craft beer. How did you get there?
I guess I was a reluctant entrant into craft beer, because I didn't even have my first drink until I was 22. And my friends got me into the hard stuff first. And I really had no interest in drinking beer. I'm just like, beer seems kind of boring. It's like, whatever, fancying myself an epicure, right? So I'm like all about cooking and all this gourmet cuisine and creating that at home. And I thought beer is just beer. I didn't know any better, right? Like I hadn't been educated yet. So luckily, one day, some coworkers came and said, "Hey, we're going to this place called O'Brien's after work. You want to come?" I said, "What's O'Brien's?" I said, "Oh, it's a beer bar down the street." And I said, "Well, that sounds fun, but I don't really drink beer." I said, "So what?" I said, "You're right. So what? Let's go down there." O'Brien's is the longest running and one of the most respected craft beer establishments in all of San Diego and Southern California. I would even dare to venture on that. I didn't know what I was getting into. I get in there, we go to a table, waitress comes by and she starts asking people what they want. Everybody ordered this thing called Bigfoot. And I was like, what's the coolest beer name I've heard like on commercials and stuff? And I really couldn't come up with much. I'm like, I'll have a Heineken. They said, oh, wait, no, he won't. He'll have a Bigfoot. I said, okay. This beer shows up. I'm like, this looks like nothing like any beer I've ever seen. I thought it was supposed to be yellow. They're like, just trust us on this. I'm like, whoa, there's a lot going on in here. This is pretty strong. They said, it sure is. Anyway, so that beer and An Arrogant Bastard later, and I was hooked. I'm just like, man, I really like this craft beer stuff. Beer's all right. It's way better than I thought it was going to be. And so I just started getting into drinking it. My friend was a home brewer, so I was always checking out new styles with him on that front, like going to breweries. There weren't a lot back then, but there was a good amount. This is like 1998. And over the next several years, I get really into the scene and just enjoying it. And as I became a writer in 2007, it was my first paid writing, began as a freelancer. And I realized people were not really writing about this great beer we had right in our backyard. And most people I tried to talk about it to had no idea what I was talking about. So I pitched it to a publication called Pacific San Diego. And they said, are there enough breweries to really even make a roundup? Because that was my idea. I wanted to show everybody all the breweries. I said, oh, there's a ton. There's like 18. Well, now there's over 200 brewery-owned venues in San Diego. So we've grown up a bit. But that was my first article, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I've written for nearly every local publication, and I've written about beer. It's been fantastic. I've written for nationals and trades, and I just love this industry. I love craft beer, the way that it really actually brings people together. It brings people together, and everyone's so inviting in the industry that not only have they allowed me to participate as a journalist, I was invited to become part of it by folks at Stone. And geez, just the people I've met have been so wonderful, and as I became a journalist, I really got into it because I met all these people and trying to tell their stories and everything. So that's really got me into beer. At first, beer got me into craft beer, then people got me into craft beer, and it's just been awesome since then. And I felt really weird about leaving the craft beer industry, but I'd been working two jobs for 12 years at that point, and I mean like two full-time jobs because the journalism, I mean, took off. It's full-time journalism as well. But I was able to finally do one job. So I picked the writing. And the reason I did it was because I knew I'd still get to interact with all the people within the industry. And I'll tell you, I still communicate with dozens of people every single day who are at breweries throughout San Diego. So I probably communicate more with people in the industry now than I did then. And yeah, that's what got me into craft beer. And with any luck, I'll never have to leave it.
I think that that's a safe sort of statement. So you've kind of covered how you got to your space in craft beer. So let's talk about the coolest project you've worked on.
I got to work on a lot of really cool things when I was with breweries. I mean, like the Enjoy By campaign for Stone was really cool. Opening the Tony Gwynn Museum and other things at AleSmith was fantastic. And then just everyday things with society and the way that they were able to connect with the community was great. But above all, I would say that starting my own business and San Diego Beer News for me has been the coolest project because when you write for other publications or work for anybody for that matter, you hear no sometimes, and you have people shape what it is that you're doing the way that they want you to do it. You feel like sometimes they don't quite understand where you're coming from. And I think everybody's worked at a place, and even though if they enjoyed it, they say, man, if I could just do this my way.
Right.
And so I had the chance to do it my way. I ended up starting this business in the middle of COVID. A lot of the publications I wrote for were pretty much out of commission during COVID because all the advertising was gone. All the places weren't open. There was nothing to really write about in a lot of senses as well, or at least people thought there was nothing to write about. I was able to debunk that a little bit, but I needed to come up with my plan B. And luckily, before leaving the brewing industry, I knew if I'm going to go for writing, I can't count on any of these media spots to necessarily be open for very long because the face of media has completely changed, and it was changing then. I could just see the direction it was going. I'm like, I need my own thing. I'm going to ride this out, but I need a plan. So I had made a plan, put it in the drawer, closed the drawer, and hope to never open it. But 5 months later, here I am opening the drawer, and I got my little San Diego Beer News binder, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give this thing a shot. Let's do it. And it was really, really exciting. I got to work with a friend of mine who worked with at Stone. He'd since gone into his own multimedia, found his own multimedia company. And so he and I were on it. We worked together. We were really good friends. We really simpatico on the whole thing. I had people, friends of mine helping with the logo and some other content, and within less than a month we had the whole thing going. At first it was just social articles on social media about certain breweries opening and things that people would want to know. I just kept on writing full-scale articles, putting them on Facebook, Instagram, things like that, to ramp up a whole month to San Diego Beer News coming out. And it worked really well. People have been engaged since day one. I think it's because I had an audience for so long, but I think people also responded to the way in which I came at it. And I come at this whole thing from craft beer fan perspective first. I'm not just looking for hits. I'm not looking for this and that. I think I really understand the industry. There's things I love about it, and there's things that I'm looking for. I want to know when the new beers are coming out. I want to know when events are happening. I want to know when a brewer moves from one place to another. I want to know what places are expanding. If a place is closing, unfortunately, I need to know that as well. And it works out pretty good. We do all sorts of crazy things, like have lists that go sometimes as high as 100 for new beers that are coming out each week, and recommendations on beers from our local bottle shop, and articles and all sorts of fun things. But we have programs like San Diego Beer News Awards. We bring people together to make pro-am beers via our homebrew summer every year. Breweries get on board for both of these last things I was talking about, the awards and homebrew summer. These are great things we couldn't do, or I guess I couldn't do. I don't know why I would say we, but if it wasn't for the generous spirit of the craft beer industry, which is another thing that I really just love to highlight. I like to show off the fact that these companies really care about more than just their bottom line. And I think that one of the best things that brewing companies can show when they try and differentiate themselves and show who they really are is beyond the beer that they create and all of that, is to just show what's in their hearts and kind of what makes them tick as far as their connection with the community, whether it's charity organizations or community measures, or making some homebrewer's dream come true by taking their recipe and helping them brew it, releasing it at their tasting room. So it's a very dynamic site, San Diego Beer News. It takes a lot of work to make it. It took a lot of work to create it. It takes a ton of work to maintain it. It takes a lot of work to keep growing it, but it's been the most gratifying experience of my life. And doing it my own way, it could have completely flopped, right? Like there was a little like looking at myself in the mirror during the whole thing. It's like, yeah, I finally do it my way. Man, I hope it's not a complete failure, but it hasn't been. And really, that has everything to do with the audience. But then first and foremost, of course, the brewers that share their stories with me and let me share this news with my audience. So it's a team effort, and hopefully all the tools and resources I talked about help to make it even more worth it for those who are helping me to do what I do. So just everything from all the detail I've been able to get in there, but then also working with everybody, like I said, that it's just made it the coolest project that I've worked on ever.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it all goes full circle, which is wonderful in all sorts of ways. So that's really a good lead into the wisdom that you can mine from all those years of wearing all of those hats.
Yeah, I don't typically attribute wisdom as like an adjective that I throw around very much with myself, but I'll try today.
Should we say experience? Would you be more comfortable with that?
There you go. There you go. You can tell me if it comes across as wisdom. But like I said, a lot of this is very simple when it comes down to it. I hope it doesn't sound too top level. If anybody has any questions, by all means, ask. And that goes beyond this. I do realize this is recorded so that people can check it out later. So I'll give my contact information will be at the end, and feel free to reach out. I like to be available for anybody. And yeah, if I can be of assistance, let me know. So I was asked to give 5 best practices, and it was kind of tough to whittle it down. So forgive me if it comes across as more like 12 that are all just kind of like squished together as 5. But the question was how to deal with beer media. And I've been a member of beer media. So of course, I think we're awesome. Your base and beer media are great. They are the way that you really connect with people who care so much about beer, or even have a passing interest in it, enough to be checking out, beer websites and beer Twitter and things like that. But I would urge people to remember that there's a whole vast world out there beyond beer media. Quite frankly, beer media, we're easy. Okay. I don't need to give you too much of a tutorial on how to deal with beer media. Basically, you want to know who they are, communicate with them. It should be very simple because they have a vested interest in what you do and what you produce, and they're going to be all about it. I am going to be all about it. But the reason I encourage people to also remember that there's a whole big world out there as far as media is that they represent larger media properties with larger audiences, which is not necessarily, it does not make them better. What I always say about San Diego Beer News is like, you look at something like a magazine in my hometown, and they might have like, let's say 230,000 Instagram followers, right? And I've got upwards of between 11 and 12. Thing is, I'm reaching all the people you want to reach on a daily basis. Anybody who sees anything I'm writing in my audience is way into beer. So that's like 100% hit on anybody I'm hitting, right? Whereas the large magazine has 230, 4% get to see it. I don't know what small percentage of their audience really cares about beer. And so it's not necessarily the same like slam dunk as you might think it is, but they're all valuable. So you want to be able to reach people who are looking at these publications, TV stations, radio stations, listening to podcasts, and hit them on more than just the beer. The beer is great. I mean, if you have great beer, and anybody who likes beer like shows up, they're gonna say, "Oh, this is quality beer. I like it. It's pretty cool. It's in my neighborhood." Whatever they like about it, great. But you want to find ways to reach the general public, to have a topic of interest for the general public. And that's what you always see when you're looking at stuff like I do a monthly segment for Fox 5 Morning News. And I'm not just talking about they have a great beer. It's never that simple. It's like family friendly spots in San Diego, a certain type of beer, like they'll do a lot of fundraiser segments on that show. So you want to find things that connect with people on a different level and find ways to get people into your establishment or trying your beer out in the open based on topics of general interest. And so I would challenge any brewery owner, even if they're not even open yet, like if you're trying to establish yourself and what you're all about, if you are the brewery who is into supporting charities that help children from a health perspective, for instance, I'm just off the top of my head, that's already a topic of interest for any news station, magazine, newspaper in your community right now, before you're even open. And that'll come in handy if you can grab people based on that, because the thing is, it's authentic. As long as all these things are authentic, it's all good. It's not like you're like leaning on that in some kind of like slimy marketing way. If that's who you are and that's what you're about, you want people to know that. And the good thing is the media wants to know about it too, because these are things anybody with a heart, so everybody can get behind. If you're going to have a cool event that is helping a charity partner, or if you're just having a cool event in general, I mean, if you're having like a classic car show at your tasting outside your tasting room, that's something that you can hit anybody up with. So don't just get so married to your beer media partners, who are so valuable. You should love them more than anybody else, even your family, and give them a lot of beer like me. But seriously, don't get so married to them that you forget everybody else, or say, I don't know anybody else. You can get to know them. And this kind of segues into my second point.
I think Steve has a question. If we could take a quick break.
Sure, of course.
Bring it on, Steve.
Hi. So I was curious what you thought of the news of the oldest craft brewer, Anchor, closing, and them being owned by Sapporo and Stone down in your region, potentially, gobbling up some of those resources. And then conversely, what does that mean for somebody wanting to start a brewery? When breweries are closing, it's not something that a new brewery wants to hear about, right?
Sure. Well, I would say breweries have been closing since the dawning of breweries, so I wouldn't really worry about that. I mean, I haven't seen nearly the closures I would have expected from 2020 on. I've seen a lot of survival stories and some good things happening. I don't really know what to say about the failure of Anchor post sale. I mean, there's really no words, right? There's no words to explain a brewery that's been around as long as them and been so influential, especially here in my home state of California. And a big deal.
Right.
Going back to working at Stone, Greg Cook, his first beer that inspired him to get into beer at all was an Anchor Steam. I don't know what to say about it, especially from a marketing perspective or a media perspective, but it's a shame. I will say that just anecdotally, I've seen the interest in that product wane. I will say, as a consumer, that I saw the quality of that product completely fall off. I didn't want to drink any of those beers. I can't. Anchor Christmas Ale, one of my favorite things that used to come around, just did not do it for me in the past several years. And I just think that a lot of people probably noticed a fall off, or just simply had less interest. When a company sells, there tends to be that's kind of like a side effect, is that less people are then interested in that product, regardless of quality, regardless of anything else. We're like, oh, well, it's not the same thing anymore. I don't want it. I wouldn't let it discourage anybody starting a new brewery. I would say that most people starting new breweries, the trend is to be smaller, hyper local. People have different ideas of what it means to be successful opening a brewery these days. There used to be, I want to be regional. I want to buy beer in all 50 states, every grocery store shelf. And now you've seen the shift to people like, I just want to be my neighborhood's brewery. I want to do a good job, have all my folks from my community come in and have this be a positive place for them to drink my beer, and enjoy my beer. And yeah, that would make me happy. I want to make my living. I want to pay my bills and, pay my mortgage doing something I love versus working for the lame job I used to have that I don't like anymore. I think that that's enough for a lot of people these days. And that's also what's, all these small breweries has made it harder for larger breweries to do what they do, because it's just different scales, right? I think there's plenty of success to be had for new breweries, and people can feel
I agree with
encouraged.
that. Yeah, if I can add to that too, it's something that we talk about quite a bit because we're watching, supply chain as a supplier. But the Brewers Association talks about this quite a bit as well. While there are quite a few brewery closures, there are still a lot of brewery openings. So that is kind of leveling off, and it may be something that we're experiencing more than what we're used to in the past in terms of closures, but we're also still seeing, a high number of brewery openings at the same time. So I don't think it's an industry-wide thing as a whole. We may not be seeing this exponential growth that we saw 5 or 10 years ago, but there's still a lot of potential with beer. And I think continuing to have new breweries is really important to keep driving the industry. I think once we start getting discouraged about opening new breweries because we're afraid they're going to close, I think that's when we're going to stumble. So I do totally agree with Brandon on some of the regionality things. We're seeing a lot of like those regional breweries not being as successful because there's a lot more smaller, hyper local breweries opening, and people are really supporting those. This whole like theme of support local, I think, has been huge in these last couple of years. And that, I think, is where a lot of the success lies. And someone like Anchor, while, from a historical beer perspective, it's really, really sad to see them go. Consumers' tastes have changed, consumer wants have changed, and that brewery doesn't fit anymore. I mean, we've seen a lot of, great old breweries in the past close that you're really sad about, but were you really drinking a lot of those beers? Probably not. It's more nostalgic, I think, than anything else.
I used to drink it, like you said.
Used to, right? Like
Yeah.
that was the thing.
We've
But
also
I mean,
seen,
I can't think in the last couple of years when I've had any like Anchor beer.
yeah, we've also seen a lot of the smaller breweries paying more attention to learning to be better business people. And especially now with the cost of goods going up and surviving the pandemic, it's more important than ever to do it more carefully and to step up the game on all business levels. Mark, have you seen that being there's more awareness?
I'd like to think so. I mean, I have to support everything that was said thus far. Regional space is tough. Classic breweries that are grounded in their traditional beer. I mean, tastes have changed, but I'd also throw out there too, is, Brandon, I hear what you're saying. It's like maybe we haven't seen the closures that we would have seen post pandemic, but there was a lot of pop up from the government at that time too. So, the breweries that I work with, I see the margins, I see kind of the profit numbers that are coming through. If there is a profit, it's a tough bit. I mean, we know this. It's a tough business. Nobody's in this to get rich. And I mean, I'd even use my own local market maybe as an example. We've got a guy coming in this weekend, new local brewery in this market. Man, I see what's happening. It's like, I wish him all the best, but I'm totally with Laura on this one. It's like, you've got to have a really strong business background in this market. And I like what you're saying here, Brandon, especially just in terms of making sure you have the voice of the media involved, because you need to stand out.
Yeah, I think the most recent new brewer had regional breweries down 2%, but tap rooms up 8%.
Good stat.
So it seems about right anecdotally from my experience.
And those numbers are going to probably be a little bit washed in terms of also seeing numbers from, just using an example that we all know is like New Belgium's just absolutely slaying it with Voodoo Ranger. But just looking at the brewery numbers here in the state of Colorado, regional space, seeing numbers as high as 30% down in 2022. So it's a tough time for regionals.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. 100%.
Brandon, one other question. To took a look at your website. I like the map that you have that shows the 209 breweries in that area. Do you imagine that becoming saturated? Can it grow to 250, 300?
Well, we're not on the road to any of that. I think that we're pretty much going to stay at this number ish
Okay.
for a while. So we're not really worried about it, but people have been worried about it the whole time I've been writing about beer too. Back when we went from 8, we were hit like 40. Would you think there's too many breweries? And I used to always say, are there too many pizza shops? Are there too many pizza restaurants in your town? No. You know, like, can you hit a saturation point for Domino's, Pizza Hut, and like all of the pizza places and then mom and pops? No. It'll be what it's going to be for our county. Our county is huge. So there's still neighborhoods that don't have any craft beer presence at all. So it's kind of also about positioning. It's like, yes, if like the 15th brewery wants to go into this one finite neighborhood, yes, you reach a saturation point at that point probably. But for people who don't have one yet, it's hard to look at the whole scale and say, well, there's 200. Let's say there's 204. 204 is too much. 210 would be too much. You know, like you can't say it just by the number. I have to like really analyze where everything is at. But certainly on a more community focused perspective, then yes, there's definitely a saturation point. And we used to have more, we have less now, and so it's just really it's hard to say. But honestly, I don't like I'd like to look at how many taco shops we have in San Diego. It's like, well, I don't know. Is 722 taco shops too many for San Diego? You just can't say, right?
I like tacos.
Yeah. Oh man, they are good here too.
San Diegans
That-
like tacos.
I wish that I could be a beer and taco shop fair writer. That would be that's the dream gig. Dream gig is beer, but the ultimate dream gig would be doing that too. Taco of the week.
I've heard a lot of people say in beverages that coffee, like Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, you know, the coffee places, that's a beverage. How many of those are there?
It's a good point. And there's never the way I look at it also is, you know, there's a range of quality, but there's definitely room for a good brewery at any point. So there's that too. Even if you think you're at a saturation point, if some amazing brewery that's making just stellar beer shows up, you wouldn't want to who have said, sorry, we've cut off the licenses at this point, you know. So I guess I can go to my second tip. It's
Back on track.
in marketing, people always say one of the most important things, know your market. And in this case, I say know your media. You know your local media. It's very easy to do. It's right there in your face all the time. I mean, we're talking about TV stations with news, and we're talking about newspapers that are already just like in your face around, like periodicals and circular, free periodicals, the alts and things like that. You should know radio stations. You should know, new media, just like outlets like San Diego Beer News. If you make San Diego beer, you should know that San Diego Beer News exists at very least. You should know, what websites are out there, podcasts that are out there, even influencers. I mean, I'm not a big influencer fan, but creators and influencers, that's a real thing. And if you can reach people that way in an authentic way, I say that's good stuff. So you should at least know what's out there. I'm not saying you need to hit all of these people up, but if you're a regional brewery, then you should probably know the media in your top markets at that point. If you're a national brewery, okay, you see where I'm going with this, right? So you should know top markets there as well. But no matter how big you are, you were going to these regional and nationals, owning home's always important no matter what it is. That's very important. And you can always contract and come back to your home base if you own home. And a great way to do that's with media. So like I said, TV, radio, online outlets, podcasters, creators, influencers. Thanks to Google, it's very easy to know all of them. Who's on these different, within the outlets, who is reporting. Like you go to, like say your CBS affiliate, you know that they do some, so they always say hard news and fluff. I guess I'm part of the fluff. I don't know what to say. It's a bummer, but I think it's hard news. Hard not to like. You want to find out who on their staff would actually report about anything that you're doing. And see what else they report on so that you can see the easiest way to connect what you've got to what they want and need. They're easy to reach out to. A lot of times, like on a bio sheet right on a website for a station, you can get in touch with a reporter right there via email. If you can't, I guarantee you they have a social media presence, and I guarantee you they wouldn't mind if you did something as simple as, direct message them on Twitter or slide into the DMs on Insta and just say something. My opening line for something like that is, do you accept press releases? Of course they accept press releases. So the answer is yes already. And then if they say yes, if they don't already tell you, ask them how they like to receive them. And that's of course going to be their email address, and they'll give it to you or they won't, but they're probably going to give it to you. It's just that simple to get in touch with somebody like that. It's not difficult. And then you just file that away, you've got it. And then you start working up like what might fit for them, because they're all different. Like the reporter at CBS can be different than the reporter at ABC, is going to be different than the reporter at Fox, different than the reporter at NBC, whatever it might be. And the same with the radio stations. They might have a beer bit that they do. They might not. Figure that out, see what's going on. Podcasts are generally easier because you're probably going back to beer media at that point, but then you might hit something that's greater, like something about great things to do in Reno. I don't know, but whatever it might be, right? So know all these people, find out how to get in touch with them. Good thing to do ahead of time. Like, I mean, basically you're scouting them like a Major League Scout would do. You're finding out what they're about, how you can fit in, and there you go.
How many breweries and of what sizes do you work with an agency to get the news and happenings versus working directly with an owner? Like, what type of positions do you usually interact with? And is any of it third party, or is it all directly with the brewery itself?
That's a good question. I don't do a lot of dealing with PR companies, only because of the nature of brewing. A lot of breweries just can't afford PR agencies or consultants, so they generally are doing it on their own, which is fine. But to be honest with you, I would say like maybe 15% of the breweries I deal with come at me with any kind of presence, like a PR company, a marketing person on staff, or even somebody on staff doing marketing. But that's where I'm a little different, in that I'm going to the breweries. Generally, I'm the point of inquiry. I will know something's happening or think something's happening and get in touch with them directly. And I think that's why you don't see as much of breweries in the media, is because they don't have somebody doing it for them. They don't really know how to do it. And they don't know it's as easy as what I'm basically telling you right now. It's not too tough. And it's easier than, that's why I was like, it's easier than you think. It's just not that hard, because at the end of the day, they're human beings just like you and me. They're professionals. Another thing I should stress: be a professional. Don't. I know that beer can be a crazy industry sometimes, but definitely like remember that they don't wear boots to work, and they don't wear shorts and flip flops into a tasting room. And try to just come at them very vanilla is what I would say, until you get to know them. But then by all means, once you form a relationship, be friendly, be cool, be lax, and be yourself. But until you know where they land on the personality spectrum, which can be very different from what you see on TV, be very vanilla. But
So I like our emails get a little spicy sometimes, but
that's okay. That kind of thing's okay, because they respect it in a certain format. But it's just like, I don't know. I just say to be careful until you really know somebody, because a lot gets lost in translation on email, as I've sadly found out many times.
Yeah, but I think, from my experience working with media, like, you are very unique in the sense that you actively seek out stories and try to promote the community, whereas, most non-beer media outlets don't do that. And I agree that I think it's not as hard as people think. My unsolicited advice is, most times working with media, they've got very short deadlines and very high expectations. So having the ability to be pretty flexible and getting the materials that are requested of you. And if you do, generally it'll turn into something reoccurring within the next year, has been my experience.
Yeah, I would echo exactly what you said. They've got short deadlines and typically big expectations. Um, if you have solicited coverage, my big thing, and it's in the new brewer thing that I wrote, actually, it's a big point. At that point, be flexible. Realize that these people have picked up your pitch. They're going to give you free coverage to thousands and thousands of people. Be available, because I cannot tell you how many times working for other folks, they're like, oh, I can't. I got to brew that day. I got to do this that day. I got a meeting this day. I got this and that. It's like, dude, we asked for it. We got it. It's like somebody gave us a gift. It's like a gift that has fallen down from the heavens. Make yourself available. You asked for it. Now, like, rearrange your day. Tell that guy you get a meeting with, hey, I'm going to be on the news. He'll say, oh, cool. Okay, we can move it back. No problem. And if he does, let's say this person doesn't say that. Is that somebody you really want to work with? Probably not. So, like, yeah, definitely be ready to mobilize, because that's typically how it will go. And the more you can give them, the better showing you can have. They'll remember that. And then when they have something beer related, they'll go to their very, very small Rolodex of breweries they know, and you'll be in it. And they'll come to you. They'll come back to you time and time again, because it's just easy. They're not looking to know every brewery in town. They want to know the breweries that have come through for them, and vice versa. If they show up and you grouse about and act like, I'd get up early for this, like, okay, I won't come back. Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. You asked me to do this, and here I am, and there you go.
Yeah, I would say same goes for having collateral ready to go, logos, headshots,
Yeah,
stock photos. That's something that's always asked. And if you don't have just a folder of that and have to search it, your day's late. You can lose opportunity there from grabbing the big image spot on the article. They're going to go with something else.
absolutely. I think it's funny too when I request imagery like that. A lot of times people hey, can I get an exterior shot of your building? I don't have that. Now, the last time I checked, everybody has a camera masquerading as a phone in their pocket,
Right.
right? So, I mean, at very least, just give it a whirl. It doesn't have to be like you brought over some professional photographer. Although, if you could make it look nice, please try to do that. But yeah, the number of times I get told no on imagery is just nuts. It's like, yeah, I would just advise one day, invite somebody over, pay them like $250, have them take a ton of shots of different beers, different parts of your tasting room, your brewery. It's one time, $250. I mean, it's like, in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. Now I realize everything costs money and I hate to spend it, but you can use that for years. And it's it gives you a leg up, like he's talking about, and it's just in your arsenal. You can use it whenever you want. They don't go out of style, and they're great for social media too. So it's not like, even if you don't get a bunch of media stuff, you can use every single one of those shots on social media and repurpose it. What I was going
Okay.
to say is, when
Give
you
us a little
finally read
Reader's
that-
Digest here. Go through your others before we lose. I want to get all 5.
Okay, great. So these are very short by comparison. So no square pegs and round holes. Really know what these people report on. Don't send them everything. Don't inundate them with information, like, especially with, say, like TV and radio. These are higher value. So don't just hit them with, hey, we're having a blood drive tomorrow. That's not important. You're not going to sell a ton of beer off of that anyway. And you could probably have another one next year. It's not a big deal. It's not important. Pick your moment. It's a silver bullet. Go for it. But really know. And then also avoid the dreaded form letter. Please, when you reach out to media, make it a singular email directly to them. In the first couple of lines, just say something personal, like, hey, I loved your segment on that new coffee place today. That was awesome. I was wondering if maybe you could help me show off my business. It's very similar because of ABC, like, whatever it might be. Really make it personal and personable. That's a big thing. It goes a long, long way. And you can attach the press release. That's got all the facts right there. You don't need to name them all, and you don't have to have some big long form letter that people can't get through. Make it personal. And even though you're going out to multiple sources, you don't have to say that necessarily, but they'll understand that as well. This one goes beyond media, but messaging. It's one of my biggest lessons I try to teach people when they ask about marketing a brewery, is that don't tell me what you're not going to do. Tell me what you're going to do. Don't tell me you're never going to make a hazy IPA. Don't tell me you're never going to sell the business. Don't tell me you're never going to do blankety blank, blank, blankety blank. I don't care. I'd really like to know what you're gonna do. Could you stick to that, please? I have worked for companies that said both of those things and then did both of those things.
Right.
And I wasn't around when those things happened, but I do know that it's extremely embarrassing, and worse yet, is really bad for your bottom line. It's just not good when you spend all this time, years, harping on stuff. And the worst part is nobody ever asked you. Nobody said, hey, what are you not going to do? So I would say to stick to the positives and what you're all about, and don't spend time telling people what you're not about or knocking on other people because of what they're about or do. And last but not least, this is a sixth one, I guess. I don't know. Think of others first. This was one thing that I found. I find this universal, not just to breweries, but to companies in general. You know, get outside of your head and your needs and your day to day, because we all do it, right? Like, we're jobs that are completely, they take over. We're thinking of ourselves, our jobs, our bottom lines, all the things that we need to do. But especially when dealing with media, when doing marketing, when trying to communicate to people that you want to support you and enjoy what you have to offer or even sample it, you need to think about them, and almost only think about them. Not just think about it, but like almost exclusively think about them when you're marketing to them. And that goes for the media as well. You know, think about, what does a member of the media need for me to be able to help them out? Why would they want to help me out? Why is my news noteworthy? How would they like to be approached? You know, how can I make their job easier? How can I help them help me? And, you know, even think about what's it like to be them on a daily basis. So, you know, gets outside the four walls of your brewery, your tasting room, and just in general, try to make that a practice. Like, once a day, think about, or at least when you have a marketing mission, think about the other person. You know, it's easy, especially in a brewery. It's like, oh man, I can't commit to a release date, and maybe you can or whatever. But it's like, what can I give people so that they know this beer is coming, so they can actually get their hands on this beer, or whatever it might be. But it's a lot of things. Anyways, I could go on forever, but yeah, just challenge yourself to think beyond yourself and beyond your four walls, and definitely think of the other person, whether it's media or customer or potential customer.
Do you have any quick pet peeve about press releases? Anything that's best or worst?
First off, I would say you should definitely research what a press release is. If you don't know what it is, just look it up, find some good formats that work for you, and reach out to me if you have any questions about that as well. More than happy to answer questions about that. Pet peeves would be press releases that don't say anything. They're basically like, okay, this beer's coming out tomorrow, but somebody's written 4 paragraphs that have almost nothing to do with that, when they could have just, some things aren't worthy of a press release. My brewery's got a new beer. If you don't release many beers, I guess that's a big deal, and then we can get into that, right? But just fluff quotes, you know, 3 paragraphs that read like the about section of a brewery, it's just like, you're really trying hard. If it's that short, just think about who would actually be interested in that one beer, because it could be, I mean, it could be really important. If it's a beer that's like, say, a brewery in town's coming out with a beer for the Pride celebration here in San Diego this weekend, that's very noteworthy. But if you just are releasing like a watermelon goza and there's nothing behind it, it's just a watermelon goza, you have a mango goza last week, I don't know, is that really important? Just think about who you're sending it out to. Like, people like me, I'll want to know because I have my list of all the new beers coming out that week, but that's me. Or I don't know, maybe you know somebody on the radio has this big thing for watermelons. Other than that, it probably doesn't need a full press release. Or maybe you're going to have 4 releases that month. What I would suggest at that point is to make a press release that talks about your monthly releases. And we used to do this at Stone. We had what's coming up this month, and it was all the events for the month and all the new beer releases for the month. That's the way to do it, because then there's all these things they can pick and choose from, even if they're not going to include all of it. It's good for calendar sections. Yeah, and lets people know in advance. That's the other thing about press releases. When they come the day of the news or the day before, what am I supposed to do with that? You know, that happens a lot. There's a brewery that used to, awesome brewery, one of my favorite breweries, used to send me news the day before about a really cool exclusive barrel-aged beer coming out, or the day of. Like, well, it's too late now, but I would have loved to have talked about that. But think about timing. Yeah, so send it at the right time, make sure it should be good, and give me actual information. And people shouldn't have to like pick and choose around it, or like, if it's only 2 paragraphs, it's 2 paragraphs. But that's
Yeah.
more of a media alert. We can get into this
Yes.
later.
For sure. All right, Brandon, how does somebody get a hold of you if they want to reach you?
Well, I'm of a certain age and generation, so I love email.
Okay.
Brandon at sanDiegoBeer.news, not sanDiegoBeerNews.com. So it's Brandon at sanDiegoBeer.news. But you can also hit me up on socials. So even Threads. So Insta, Twitter, and Threads at SD Beer News. Facebook, of course, is just San Diego Beer News. But yeah, or just hit the contact form on my website. Please come check it out, sanDiegoBeer.news. It's really fun. Sometimes we have breaking news that's good for the entire nation. So if you want to follow our newsletter, give us a follow there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for telling your story, fielding questions, all the awesomeness. Thanks to everybody else. Thank you so much to White Labs for sponsoring us for July and for August. So we'll see you back in August. Looking forward to talking to Todd Olander and getting back into ingredients too. But I learned a lot today. So super thanks, Brandon. Appreciate that. Thanks to everybody else. And we'll see you next time around. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good evening. I'm recording.